where are we? Golan Heights, Israel, looking towards Syria, looking toward the east, okay? The first thing that jumps to our eyes, that big camp, white buildings, it's United Nations. Ooh, you know, David Ben Gurion used to call them United Nothing. So they are dispatched here every 6 months. Their mandate is renewed by the Security Council. After the Yom Kippur War, Israel insisted to have a presence of the United Nations on the Golan Heights to prevent another attack from Syria. Little did we know that United Nations will not do anything to prevent anything. But that was a way to say, that's our border. If United Nations is here, that means Golan is ours. That's a little trick. But the idea is, so they are called the UNDOF, United Nations Disengagement and Observation Forces. What do? Nothing. They do something. They are supposed to count. They're supposed to count the number of troops and weapons on one side and on the other side, so they are balanced. So no country will surprise the other. Remember Yom Kippur, that was the Syrian army was massing on the other side, but they were claiming it was training. They were claiming that's a very old trick. So Israel was not very sure it was training, but we had something else. Our best ally, that was called United States, had a Minister of Foreign Affairs called please.
That's okay.
That's a good phone. That's a good phone. If you want to throw it away, I will take it. Don't throw it away, please.
It's okay. It's well protected.
Okay. So Goldfinger? No. What was his name?
What year?
Kissinger.
He was
And Secretary of State, Ministry of Foreign Affairs or Secretary of State. And he said, you know, he's a strategist. He sees beyond everything. We have to say he's a brilliant mind. But he said that we will never be able to sign a peace treaty with Arab countries if they don't regain the honor they lost when they were beaten in the 6-Day War. So they have to be our equals. So in that case, United States pressured Israel not to strike first, like we did in in the 6-Day War. And the result cost many thousands of, not thousands, but hundreds of lives because of that. So we started the war with the surprise, not surprise attack. That means we let them shoot and attack first. Syria and Egypt at the same time, on the two fronts. What we did not know much was that they were heavily armed by the Russians with a missile, very, top of the range anti-aircraft missile. And we know that from the 6-Day War, that controlling the skies was the key for the victory. So a lot of our planes, for the first time, encountered these anti-aircraft missiles. Many of them fell on the Golan Heights and everywhere. So that we did not lose the war, but that lengthened it, and the more we had more casualties. So we have to say that the first week was the harshest week that Israel ever had, here and on the Egyptian front. Only from the 8th day, the Israeli troops started to push back the Syrian, I'm talking about this front, to push them back beyond the border and started to lead the battle within the Syrian land. And but that cost, again, a lot of casualties. And until today, Yom Kippur is seen as one of the big turning points. We have to say turning points. The 6-Day War has made us too proud and very trusting our army that will be the best in the world and so on. Yom Kippur show us we still have the best army, but it is not. It can fail. It can fail. We have to say that after Yom Kippur, there was a commission of inquiry, and the heroes of the 6-Day War became the ones that were blamed 6 years later by this commission of inquiry. We're talking of Moshe Dayan and Golda Meir. Remember, these are the heroes of the other war, but they were too much resting on their laurels, and they did not assess the danger. I would just want to say a sentence with a lot of preparation, that just to know how it was dire for Israel, that there was one of the commands was to deploy nuclear missiles that we don't have. Israel doesn't have nuclear missiles, but they were ordered to be deployed. Okay? Now the question, were we ready to use nuclear weapons that of course we don't have? Or did we want to frighten United States into thinking that we are going into a world war, and then Russia will intervene and the state will have to intervene, and that nobody wanted? So why would we do that to our friends? To hasten the help from, again, the policy was to have Israel get a good beating before intervening. That's sad to say, but it is true. And the result was that America, at this moment, changed the policy and started what we call an airlift. And weapons, tons and tons and thousands of tons of weapons started to pour to Israel in order to continue and replenish what we have lost. Not soldiers, we did not have American soldiers fighting or something, but we needed more planes, more tanks, more weapons. So that was a very a turning point, like we said, a real turning point into the history of Israel. And now again, in all these ceremonies we'll have there, most of the victims are from Yom Kippur, we have to say. Most of the victims that people are connected to. We are talking of, in a small country like Israel, 2,800 dead. It's a lot of people. Almost every family knows or have somebody that died or was wounded in the Yom Kippur War. So we returned in '74 with a ceasefire after our troops arrived about 20 miles from Damascus. Again, there was no reason for Israel to go to Damascus. You think when you make a war, you think of what happens tomorrow after the war. You don't want to go into a capital of another country. So eventually that was just a pressure, and then Israel returned to the same border, with the exception of the Kuneitra. The Kuneitra Pass, Kuneitra Valley here, can you see here? The fence that was going behind the town in a straight line, behind the volcanoes, makes a turn here, you see there, you see the road down here and goes up again behind, creating, okay, instead of that line, this thing. And Kuneitra stays on the Syrian part. Now you can see to the left side of Kuneitra there, can you see clear modern buildings there far away? That's called the new Kuneitra. So they did not rebuild, so there are Syrian forces there, but no regular population. Okay? So United Nations here, they have a few observation posts like the one there up there this way, and they were supposed, of course, to be in Syria. They were in Syria until the war in Syria started. Remember, there we were talking about 10 years ago, the big war, civil war happened there, and what happened to the United Nations? They, the forces there captured 50 troops, 50 observers. After a lot of talks, they were freed for we don't know how many millions of dollars. Israeli photographer captured really something that the United Nations said we did not do, captured the passage of the suitcases of dollars from hand to hand to free the 50 or so observers. So they all were brought to Israel. So they keep observing, but only Israel. They're too afraid to observe on the other side. And now we have something that is a paradox. They are always reporting on Israel. So at the United Nations we get every 6 months a blame about that we are breaching the rules of the separation forces and so on. Israel say, look, we are breaching, Look at the Syrians. They have brought all their armies all around and so on. From time to time, there is even some shooting from one side. We are breaching. They say, no, we don't have any reports. So they are not breaching. So there's a report only about Israel, because in Israel they are free to report. They cannot go into Syria, so they cannot report anything, any breach. So Syrians are okay. Israel is wrong. Again, that's the United Nations. I don't know how many resolutions taken by the United Nations. I know that more than 3/4 are against Israel, of all the world. I mean, Israel is such a rogue country that's not like Syria or Iran. Israel is a danger to the world. It is true, people believe that, and eventually people will believe
Propaganda.
that. Yeah. So eventually, calm return here. The border are quiet. He said while missiles started to fall. No, they shot a few. Again, these events of Ramadan, a few mortar rounds or something were shot. We believe it's not the Syrians themselves, but Palestinians of the Hamas movement that are trying. Israel retaliated by bombing very important Syrian assets directly. Israel say, we don't care, we're shooting from Syria, we attack Syria. That's the kind of deterrent that we try to get. So, this is it. Questions? Before I freeze to death? You're good? Have you ever tried the pecan nuts?
Very good.
That's gift of your driver.